I first came to the realization that I had to retire from professional basketball, it was, I was at those crossroads in terms of what do I do next? What's the next chapter for Rashad Philips? How do I make an impact? How do I make the same impact that I did as a basketball player? But how do I do that without playing basketball? That was the crossroads that lay ahead of me, and it was quite confusing at that time because I had been playing basketball my whole life, and that's all I knew. All I knew was go out and play and perform in front of people, and that came very natural and very easy to me. So when I sat in my apartment in my last year in Saudi Arabia, my coach, he was Egyptian, and we were talking, and he was saying to me that he would let me run the practices for the junior teams, and he would let me train the little Saudi Arabian kids, and they just loved it. And I was talking to my coach like, this is my last season of pro ball. What am I going to do now? And what do I do when I go back to America? And he looked at me and he said, what you've been doing here for the last 8 months? I said, what do you mean? He said, you've been training all these kids, and all these kids love you, and we don't want to see you leave Saudi Arabia because you've meant so much to our kids in this community in Saudi Arabia. And that there kind of struck a chord where when I got home, on the flight back home, I was trying to figure out how do I go about living in a place like Rochester Hills where basketball is not the dominant, not the majority sport in this city. How do I make the sport of basketball relevant in a city like Rochester Hills? So when I thought about that, I just went back to my roots. And my roots was basically my father started a program that I came under, Reach Youth Programs. He started that in 1979, and I was 1 year old, and he was at a crossroads in his life at the same time, trying to find out what was his niche in the world. He was working a 9 to 5. He was doing double shifts. He had 2 jobs. He was doing whatever he had to do to put food on the table. But my father thought and he knew that he had more to offer, but didn't know how as well. So I stood here 30 years later in the same crossroads as my father did. And I was asleep one morning, and after struggling financially, I didn't have the means to continue the lifestyle that I wanted, because I was retiring. And once you retire, you don't get those type of professional basketball checks anymore, and you kind of lose. You have a void that needs to be filled. And I woke up one morning and I jumped out of bed, and I told myself that I was going to go find something. And to me, it felt like a spiritual calling. I really believe that God woke me up that morning specifically to tell me to go find what I'm looking for. And what I was looking for was peace, meaning, purpose. I think that in life, if you have a purpose in life, regardless of the money that you make, if you have a positive purpose, I think that's better than just living. And I knew what my purpose was, and that was half the battle. And when I found out, searching to make my purpose complete in this community, I got rejected. I went to the administration buildings, and I asked for gym space so I can start my own programs, and then they basically told me no, they already had their own programs. So a door was shut in my face. But I was always taught that when one door closes, another one opens. And I was driving down the street after being rejected by the administration, and I glanced at a church that was in my view. And I have been living down the street from this church for the past 6 years or so. And I pulled into the church, and there was one car there. I walked into the church, and the doors were open.